David Day, Vicksburg Daily News, here with Stephanie Cunningham and Alderman TJ Mayfield. How are you, sir?
I'm great, man. Great.
Thank you for meeting with us today. We appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to talk to the news and public about what's going on.
Absolutely, absolutely. Always willing to keep the people informed.
So we're about 9 months into this new term. Of course, you were in office. How long were you in office before that?
Swore in June 19th.
So a year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So you've been here. You are now the senior member of the city
It
administration.
feels a little weird to say that, but yeah, technically yes. Yeah.
So the way our city works, we have a mayor, 2 aldermen. Everybody has an equal vote. Everything's done with those 3 people. You each have individual responsibilities and things that you oversee. What areas are you managing?
Yeah, there's a new chart, so primarily parts of public works and youth development.
And Parks and Public Works, that's what Roosevelt has just taken in that position. Is that correct?
No, that's Parks and Recs. That's Alderwoman Bailey.
Oh, that's Alderwoman Bailey's, and
Yeah.
I guess I misunderstood what you said.
Yeah, Public Works for me
Public
is
Works.
Public Works. Did I say Parks and Recs?
I think you said Parks and Works or something like
No,
that.
my bad. Well,
That's what I heard.
Public Works. Public Works is what I have, which is primarily sewer, water, gas, and a couple of other things. But Alderwoman Bailey has right of way, so I have street department, those things, and youth development.
And youth development, and that's a big deal, and we'll come back around to that one.
Yeah.
Just to stay on the same format we had with the other 2 conversations, the finances for the city were in pretty rough shape
Correct.
at the beginning of this term. Why do you
Yes.
think that was?
Yes, yeah. Well, you look back, obviously, with the trash and the gas not being raised for years beforehand, you had to come in and make those tough decisions to make sure we raised it based on the opinion of the Attorney General. Obviously, taxpayers are frustrated. We're upset, and I understand it. I understand it because that cost is difficult for a lot of people who are primarily on fixed income. So it is a tough raise, but it was something that we had to do. And we understand. We've been working to find solutions to help our taxpayers in any way possible. But those were primarily the 2 things, in addition to the funds that were given out for sponsorships.
And a lot of sponsorships. I saw one report, $1.7 million that last year that the last administration was in office. That's a lot of money. A lot of money just for giveaways.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were in office for that last year of that administration. And I know, there's a lot going on with this job. There is a learning curve.
Correct. For me, swearing in June. Again, it's the end of the term, so many things were already put in place before I got there, and I'm still trying to figure out what the bathroom is the first 2 or 3 months. And so by the time I figured that out, just trying to figure out, what works where, what does what. So for those first couple of months, it was difficult because, again, I came into a situation that wasn't my term, so to speak. So I was unaware of certain issues that I didn't find out about until really election season.
The situation with the garbage rates and so forth, that was kicked down the road until after the election. How did you vote on that? In terms of not raising the garbage rates after you had the letter from the Attorney General.
Well, at that time, I talked to our attorney, Lee Times, and I asked him, is it legal if we don't raise it at this point? Because I asked him, and he said, well, as a board, you can wait until raise them. And I asked him, I said, legally, is this something we can do? Because I'm not going to jail for anybody. And he said, yes, this is something we can do. And obviously, in that first board meeting of this new administration, I mentioned it in my opening comments, the rate that I thought we should raise it to, that $35. So that way, it goes up for 2 years, and the final 2 years, it'll come back down.
And so for 2 years, we're going to make up for the period of time that the rates were not
Correct.
proper thing. And then once that happens, it'll go back down to around $20 or whatever.
Correct. And that way, it does save the taxpayer some money. We had obviously 4 different options we could have done. We could have done a 1-year option that was plus north of $40. I didn't think that made too much sense to put it all on them at one time. You kind of spread it out and ease it as much as you can. You could have done one that was lower, and it would have spread it out over the course of 4 years. So putting it at a 2-year plan, and you bump it up for 2 years, and the final 2 years they kind of get some money back, if you say to speak that way. That was the recommendation that I put forth, and that's the recommendation that we went with.
Good deal. And as far as that goes, it looks to me like when you're having these board meetings that the board is cohesive and everyone's working with each other.
Yeah, I think the one thing you look at, we all have our own opinions. We all have things that we want to accomplish, but for the city of Vicksburg, we have to move forward the best way that we can. So for me, obviously, taking care of Ward 1 is a passion of mine. It's where I grew up. Obviously, my dad had this role for years. So for me, working hard on behalf of Ward 1 is something I'm going to fight on behalf of, regardless of, what the board says. But yeah, primarily, about 98% of the time we've voted together. But the few disagreements we've had, you disagree and you keep moving on.
And the appearance of that to people who provide funding and grants and things like that is important. They see a city that's working together.
Correct. Obviously, this morning, and not sure when you're going to release it, but this morning we had a meeting with FEMA and MEMA about the storm debris, and so making sure that we're prepared next time we do have a storm in Vicksburg, whether it's a hurricane, tornado, ice storm, to get debris cleaned up and picked up quicker. Also, if we have any structural damage or any infrastructure damage, they will pay us back on that as well. So it's things like that, making sure that the city is moving forward in the right direction and working with outside sources to get funding to make sure we can, help the city out the best we can.
And then Alderwoman Bailey talked about a grapple truck,
Correct.
Something that would grab the. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it'll be beneficial. We put that bid out, I think last month. We didn't accept any other bids. Some people were missing things from those bids, so we re-put it out last week. Hopefully we'll get somebody who can help us out with that grapple truck because it's desperately needed. But again, there's multiple funding sources we could tap into to make sure the city of Vicksburg can't do everything alone. Very few municipalities can do things by themselves. So working with the state of Mississippi, with the federal government and other entities that can give us some of those funding sources, I think that's beneficial for us in the long run.
And what about applying that same mentality to garbage? I mean, I didn't ask this to either one of them. It just occurred to me with the grapple truck. What about doing that with the garbage trucks? Can the city of Vicksburg buy their own garbage trucks and operate their own service?
I'm not sure. I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm not sure the explicit contract details with Waste Management. That deal was put into place before I got into office, so I'm not sure, what the details of that contract is with Waste Management. But do I think it's something we can look at? Sure, but at this moment, I can't 100% say.
Good. So as it relates to the state of the city, how's the future looking?
For me, I think it's looking very good. I think we are working with many people in the community. Obviously, we still have issues. You're always going to have issues, but I think finding a solution to those issues is the most important thing. Obviously, working with Chief Burns and youth to make sure we lower our crime. I know the police department, they're working as hard as they can, but they can't be everywhere at one time. We can't put an officer at every house at every single moment. But the best thing we can do is work hard to limit and provide solutions. And again, talking about finances and resources we can provide to people that make them not want to do it. They have something to lose. And the person that has something to lose are less likely to go out and rob a store or shoot a gun. So for me, providing those resources and materials for people in the community is something that I'm passionate about, and I'm going to keep working toward.
Chief Burns said last week that 80 to 85% of our crime problem is youth.
Correct.
That blew my mind.
Yeah. Well, for me, as a former educator, if you look at a lot of these young people, they don't see hope. And when you live in a community where you're struggling financially, you have a single mom working 2 and 3 jobs, and she's struggling to make ends meet, and a kid is raising himself. And so sometimes when those kids have things like social issues that they have, or any kind of emotional issues, they take it out on other people because they don't have a father figure, or they don't have a role model to look up to, or they don't have resources, or they've never been outside of Vicksburg to see, hey, there's a bigger world out here that you can explore. So the police department, they can't do it alone. And again, that's where funding our programs and continuing to be in the community and helping people the best way we can is the best solution to preventing crime overall.
And talking about crime in general, the chief and the police department and all that, they are in a rebuilding mode. How is that going?
For my knowledge, it's going well. I've had several conversations with Chief Burns, and we've talked about creative ways to get into the community. For me, obviously, I always try to work with the police department, whether it's going to a school, whether it's planning a neighborhood event, whether it's obviously haircuts for back to school, or it's always a creative way to reach people. But again, it can't just be showing up with the blue lights on and handcuffs, because that doesn't prevent the problem from happening. We have to address the root of it, and until we address the root of it, it's going to continue to happen.
And prevent the problem from happening. There's a video of 2 what appear to be young men to me going to people's cars in the middle of the night, 3 or 4 a.m. One of them brandishing a weapon, just looking for trouble. How did that impact you when you saw that, and what are we doing?
It's difficult for me because obviously, that could have been my mom's house, and obviously for me, it's a little different when I have a mom who's living alone, and I can't be there at all times. So that's somebody's mom, that's somebody's daughter or son that's living at that house. So that's a scary thing, to look on your camera and know that situation could have went way worse. Speaking with Chief Burns, when we had the town hall, we talked about updating cameras. We talked about increasing patrol. We talked about increasing salaries to get more officers. So that was an extremely difficult and unfortunate situation. But I think for me, there's so much more we can do to ensure that those young men aren't in that situation. And again, we can't prevent everything. I mean, a kid out at 2 or 3 in the morning, it's some things that we have no control over, but we have to try to get a handle on it as much as possible.
And there's a lot there. So we're restaffing the department. We're taking a whole new approach as it relates to interacting with kids, reducing crime. 80 to 85% of crime in our community is done by these youth. Our police department is still struggling, though, to get ahead. What can we do to fix that?
In terms of police, or?
Well, staffing is one issue. We just had this rash of fights that were all over social media. We just on the kids carrying the guns at 3 a.m. walking up in people's carports. There was no response from the Vicksburg Police Department that was known. However, I heard radio traffic on that, and there were 2 or 3 cars in the area. What can the police department do, and what can you do as alderman to help communicate to the public that things are being done and attempts are being made?
Well, like I said, I think the thing for me is I'm going to support Chief Burns as much as I can. So as in terms of a response or a release from the police department, I will defer that to Chief Burns, because he is the chief of police. So I don't overstep his head, and I'm not in the active investigation. So again, I don't think it's wise for me to speak on a crime or a crime scene that I'm not fully aware of that the police department does. Again, I think the thing for me, like you said, staffing is an issue. It continues to be an issue. Vicksburg is actually bigger than people think, land-wise. I mean, if you look at it from Kings to Clay Street down to 61 South, there's a lot of space for our officers covered. And it's not always easy to get from one side of town to the other side of town the minute a fight breaks out or the minute a domestic dispute breaks out. I think the community policing aspect has to increase. So that's one of the reasons why I always want to be involved in those neighborhood town halls, in those neighborhood activities where people can feel free and confident to contact their police department, contact their elected officials, and know that something will be done. But a lot of times you have people that don't want to talk. And so if they can't tell us something, there's nothing that we can do about it. And it's encouraging those relationships to be built stronger. I think the police department is doing a great job with getting the relationship back into the community, being active and letting people see them in a positive light. And I think that's the biggest thing. It can't just be we only see the police and talk to the police when somebody's going to jail. I think it has to be somebody feels comfortable enough to contact and say, I heard this, can we stop it before it gets started?
And along those lines, what can, there hadn't been a lot of trust in the police department over the past few years.
Sure.
The community kind of gave up and did not trust the leadership.
Right.
We have new leadership, and I see them attempting to rebuild that trust. What would you recommend to the community or to the chief for their side of that conversation?
Well, for the community, I would recommend that you meet them halfway. You can see that they're trying their hardest. And I know Chief Burns, he wants to be great at his job. I know he wants to be successful. And I know he wants a thriving Vicksburg community, just like every member of this board does. As for the police department, I would encourage them to continue to do what they're doing. Continue to be out in the community, continue to show your faces at schools, at churches, at neighborhood events. Be more than just your uniform. Let people know that you're a human, that you serve the community, but you're still a human at the end of the day. You still bleed, you still hurt, you still cry. And all of that shows people that, hey, no matter what happens, I live in this community just like you. Any crime that affects your parents affects me and my parents as well. So I think the biggest thing about it is letting people know that the police officers are more than just your uniform. They're your neighbors, they're your classmates, they're your friends, and sometimes they're your family members. But we just have to see them more than the blue lights.
I know with a lot of the stuff that you've brought up, you've addressed that issue about how we can be more active, we can be more or the police can be more proactive. But it seems like with any city nowadays, the biggest issue is going to be funding, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have all these great ideas, these great things that we want to implement to make Vicksburg better. We are a tourist-driven town. Where do you see us gaining more financial stability? Like, where can we bring in more funds?
I spoke with several people at the police department, several grants I sent to them myself directly from the Mississippi Municipal League, where one was about technology, where we talk about the cameras. I know a lot of people are apprehensive about it since the Super Bowl commercial, but Ring cameras. I think those can be a benefit to the community, where if a criminal knows that everybody on the street have a camera and they're more likely to be caught, I think there's a less likely chance that they'll commit a crime in that area. So technology updates is one from MML. I've also sent some for those community events that we talk about, so people see the presence of the police in their community. And again, it's not just on a, hey, we're coming to lock you up. It's a, hey, if you see something in your neighborhood, these are the people that you can talk to.
Right.
It doesn't always have to be that you feel like you're snitching on somebody, but wouldn't you want to live in a safe community? And sometimes that's the thing. So yes, I personally have sent some grants down to the police department from different funding sources.
And how do you see that? Do you see the same opportunities as far as public works? Gaining
Absolutely,
more financial?
absolutely. I've sent some grants to our grant writer. One was for $1.2 million for water infrastructure. Obviously, with Amazon coming, we want to make sure that our everyday citizens have enough safe, clean drinking water. So trying to get a new water treatment facility plant before Amazon gets here to make sure we keep water in the community. I've spoken with, and we applied for grants with the DRA for repaving streets, especially in the Kings community. That goes up to 61 because we have a lot of commerce that comes in that way. Also talking about lead-based pipes. By 2030, we have to take up all lead-based pipes in the community. And I know a lot of people are frustrated about street paving, But it is difficult for us to go pave the street and then go break all of it up and take the pipes up.
Right.
Obviously, the most important infrastructure is normally the things that are underground.
Right.
The water, the sewer, and the gas. We want people to have beautiful streets with no potholes, and I would love if every street in Vicksburg was paved. But I would also love if everybody had great water services, great gas service, and great sewage.
I know you mentioned with Amazon coming and everything.
Correct.
Here's the opportunity, because you've seen it as well as we have. People are telling us, no, all of our rates are going to increase because of them. Is there any validity to that, or do you have anything that you can comment on that?
When we had the meeting down at M City, I had 2 questions for Amazon. Are you promising any jobs for people in Vicksburg? The answer was no. Mm-hmm. The second question I asked was, what are the environmental impacts of this facility coming into the community? And again, they went into we're going to have the water to cool the computers down, and we're going to try to keep pollution out. For me, it wasn't a sure answer for me. And so obviously, one of the things I said, so since they're not going to promise any jobs for Vicksburg people, I went forth and met with the Mississippi Development Authority, and that's where the Small Business Expo came from. That's where the Mississippi Development Authority Contractors Academies came from. Because I wanted people in Vicksburg to be able to get money from Amazon coming here. I didn't want people coming from Louisiana, Texas, Alabama taking jobs, and our people weren't prepared here in Vicksburg. As far as the environmental impacts, that's where I talked about the public works with the water, the sewage, and the gas, and making sure that the people in Vicksburg are taken care of first before the Amazon plant comes here and resources are depleted, as we've seen in some other communities.
Were you surprised by the community response to the data center?
No. I've seen other communities have similar responses, even in South Haven. This was as recent as a week and a half, 2 weeks ago. They've had some concerns about the data center. So it didn't surprise me in the least.
And this is a done deal. I mean, there's not a lot that's going to stop it. The economic impact on the community, have we run any numbers on that?
Not concrete numbers. We hear X amount of million this day, X amount of million that day, but we haven't had, for sure, an economic impact on it.
And would it be fair to say, though, that based just upon property tax values, that it will probably increase the community fund by about 30%?
Correct. It's going to increase enhance the community in more ways than one. We did speak with Amazon. They do have some grants available for people in the community. And I've even spoken with them about their workforce development piece. So where we talk about, if you're not going to guarantee jobs for people in Vicksburg, can you at least help us develop them to where they're prepared for it? So yes, property values will increase. But again, for me, it's also making sure that the people from Vicksburg benefit from it the most.
And not just property values, but the actual plant itself. That one piece of property, which is a massive piece of property, will generate somewhere around $10 to $12 million a year in ad valorem.
Correct. Excuse me. And that's going to lead to those paved streets and better public utilities that we have here in Vicksburg. We have to be good stewards of our money. And regardless of what we do, we have to spend it wisely. You and I had a conversation a while back where I know safety is an issue, but we still have to make sure our public works guys are paid. And because they're the ones who are putting in the work to make sure that the water, sewage, and gas is running smoothly. And Amazon can't move. They can't run without our public works guys. So making sure we're good stewards of that money and making sure we're spending it wisely, again, on the people in Vicksburg.
That's a lot of money. That's a significant impact on the community. If we were to ask 10 people what they thought about Vicksburg, they would talk about natural beauty and history and incredible architecture and great food and amazing restaurants, but they would also throw out the crime aspect of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a top of mind item for everyone when we talk about Vicksburg. Mm-hmm. Can we say now that we would want to put some of this new revenue in crime prevention?
Absolutely, absolutely. And again, crime prevention is more than just the police department. And I want people to understand that you can't just eliminate crime by just adding police officers without, again, addressing the root issue of the problem. The problem is people are struggling financially primarily. And when you have a community of people that are struggling financially, we talk about those kids that don't see hope. And so they don't see a reason to continue to move forward or do the right thing, so to speak. And so again, yes, crime prevention is obviously going to be at the top of that list. But also, like you said, safety, making sure that we're paying our firemen as well. Making sure police, they're taken care of. Making sure public works. Because we have to make sure workforce development wise that we're preparing the next generation. AI is not going to replace everybody. And so we need to make sure the kids that are in elementary and junior high school now, we're preparing them to be the next public works, firemen, police officers, because we have a lot of people that are retiring, leaving. And so we want to make sure that those positions are being filled with qualified workers.
And you mentioned the fire department. We just had the largest class ever come through and graduate. To what do you attribute that?
I think leadership. I think the cohesiveness of the fire department. A lot of guys, they talk and speak so highly of the Vicksburg Fire Department. It was funny walking in that room and seeing some of the kids I taught, coming through as firemen now, and they're becoming fathers and great leaders in the community. But again, I think it's because you have so many people that speak so highly of the Vicksburg Fire Department, not just in Vicksburg, not just in Warren County, all around the state of Mississippi. When I talk, when I worked in Jackson, I had a lot of people say, Vicksburg has their own services for this. And every community isn't like that. Every municipality isn't like that. We have great response times. Everybody can't say that. We have great men and women that care about their job. And I think that's the most important capital that we have in this city. The people that care is the most important commodity that we have.
Well, speaking of response times, the ambulance service we have in town is it's part of the fire department. It's an extension of that service. There was conversation during the last administration about going to a private ambulance service. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, we haven't had that, since I've been here. I would not be in favor of it because I think we have so many great qualified people and we do such a great job now. But it has not been a topic of discussion within this administration.
So we have a municipality. We have gas, water, and sewage service along with garbage service. Mm-hmm. And we kind of talked about garbage trucks and maybe doing something with that.
Sure.
But have we considered setting up a municipal utility district or a public utility district to manage those services and take the burden of that off the city and shift it over to a fee-based service, and then the city can focus on other items?
We haven't had those discussions yet.
What do you think about the idea?
Haven't thought much about it. Hasn't come up. I've had some discussions with other cities about it. Like, I know Hattiesburg did some things about a meter project years ago. I talked to their former mayor, Johnny Dupree, about that very briefly. But I have not had a lot of in-depth thought or conversation about it. So I wouldn't want to give an answer because I just haven't, put a lot of thought into it.
And, we were talking some about the water lines need to be replaced if they have lead connectors on them. Mm-hmm. And most of that lead connection was at the water meter at the house. Mm-hmm. So will that be the responsibility of the homeowner or the city?
We are currently in the midst of a water meter change-out project. I think it's $100,000 that the city will get for their project. And again, for me, this isn't a political statement by any sense, but I think if we're going to get $100,000, that water needs to go back. That money needs to go back into public works. So yes, we're currently in the process of that water meter project. I've met with people in Missouri and some other states, and they talk about the importance of making sure that your water works for you. I've met with people about a smart water project where you can run your Wi-Fi through water. I'm not that much of an IT guy, so I was kind of weirded out about internet and water, but it was interesting. So we did have those conversations about smart water and smart meter projects.
And you are heading up a number of projects, including like a legal counsel thing coming up here soon.
Yeah.
Would you like to highlight those before we finish up?
Yeah, so every month I try to look out for our senior citizens in the community. I want them to know that they're not forgotten about. And for the last 3 months, we've did a free legal clinic for seniors in our community. But that clinic, people can get their wills, estate planning, all of that done completely free of charge if you're age 60 and older. For me, housing has been the most important thing for me this past year and a half. I went to the Mississippi State Capitol, trying to get Vicksburg some money for housing. In addition to getting the old hospital torn down that is desperately needed because we don't want another situation like we had some years ago. Thinking about some housing we can put in that place. Like I said earlier, I don't want people from different states and communities to come to Vicksburg and take those SAC dollars back out. So when the jobs come here, I want people to live in Vicksburg. And so we have a lot of air property in the community where the grandmother passes away and the kids and the grandkids live in different states and they let the properties just get run down and dilapidated. Well, if we can take care of that now, by making sure estate planning is taken care of, by making sure you have your will intact, then it benefits not just your family, but it benefits the entire city of Vicksburg as well. Because we have a clear plan to where we don't have to get tied up in legal battles, fighting, trying to get a house torn down or something like that. I think if you get these problems on the front end and you take care of them now, it helps with our housing problem later.
How's the business environment in Vicksburg?
I think it's growing. I think there's ways that we can improve it. Obviously, we passed the ordinance with blighted and dilapidated buildings, especially for commercial properties. For me, I was looking at places like Washington Street and Clay Street in particular, where those are two of the main areas that people enter into Vicksburg. So we don't want abandoned, boarded up buildings coming off I-20 in two different directions, or 61 for that matter. So I think the business community is growing, but there's always more we can do. So I'll continue to work with the Mississippi Development Authority, the small business organizations to make sure that the funding, the opportunities, the grants, the small businesses in Vicksburg, they know about it.
Very good. Alderman, thank you for meeting with us. Is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we wrap up?
Oh man, I'm fine. I'm good.
Stephanie Cunningham, thank you. Alderman, thank you for being
Thank
here.
you.
For the
Thank you.
Vicksburg Daily News, David Day.